Welcome to my individual presentation for PMGT5871, Process Planning and Control. Analysing the article entitled A Consideration of Reflexive Practice Within the Critical Projects Movement is my attempt to explore a question that is often asked but rarely answered. A generic form of this question could be articulated as, but how does that apply to this situation? Of course, it takes many forms and varies in focus, but it is always geared towards asking for an elegant solution in terms of project theory to the uncertainty and social complexity that surround any organizational environment. It could be argued that the reason I never hear someone get a clean answer to the above question is that the solution is always a different shade of grey. To be more specific, it is a culmination of knowledge and application over time, which builds a repertoire to support expert judgment, or in other words, experience. So the reason that I've really chosen this article is just to start getting to know the problem a little better. The article by Sage, Dainty and Brookes examines the dialectic approach to knowledge creation within the critical projects movement. In this context, it also explores the relevance, role and potential for reflexivity to reconcile the dichotomy present between standardized rationalist knowledge and the elements required in practice during the execution of project management activities. The overarching theme to this is the hard versus soft polarity and the dialectic nature of developing knowledge within the field to reconcile these differences. The paper is broken into three sections. The first examines knowledge development in the critical projects movement. The second looks at the role of dialectics in this process. And the third demonstrates how the assumptions of the dialectic process need to be monitored when developing knowledge. Throughout all three stages, the potential for reflexive practice to contribute is identified. The section exploring knowledge development in the critical projects movement examines efforts of both project thinkers and practitioners to develop new ground from synthesis of existing knowledge. The end goal of such efforts was initially to provide clear guidelines and parameters around project work. However, the standardization endpoint is seen to create a new problem for practitioner reflexivity. Standardization is then juxtaposed with later efforts towards bottom-up craft-based approaches that emphasize value, tacit knowledge, reflexivity, and social complexity over instrumental control and narrow time cost quality objectives. Dialectics are introduced as a vehicle for development of reflexive project practice. In particular, Hegelian dialectics are explored in this context. This loosely follows a thesis-antithesis synthesis cycle. This technique is used to reconcile the dichotomy present between hard and soft practice and progress the knowledge base for reflexivity. The final message in this paper is awareness, and this is delivered through a focus on some of the most relevant critiques of dialectic reasoning. The flaws present in dialectic knowledge progression are viewed in the example of the different levels of managerial control present in reflexive and standardized practice. In short, it is shown that decreasing management control is somewhat meaningless, as the subsequent outcome is expected to increase management control. Personally, the article has provided me with further insight into some of the factors that need to be considered when applying a methodology such as PMBOK. In particular, the suggestion of more dynamic models or selective applications require careful consideration in terms of the goal they are working toward. I have seen many project managers who I would consider highly skilled in adapting methodology and navigating social complexity. However, this divergence is always working towards the same goal of control. Perhaps the reason why the article is not reverent of these practices is that there is no simple way to teach them formally. If the techniques in this divergence are aimed at achieving the same control, then it is reasonable to assume that they could be considered as some sort of social manipulation. This manipulation is not innately negative. However, the more conscious people are of the techniques, the more likely they are to relate to this form of control and resist the process. This has provided me with invaluable insight as to why my initial question was so difficult to answer. The themes in this article relate very closely to work on complex adaptive systems in the supplementary readings of Process Planning and Control. The reflexive model and subsequent investigations into management control are critical to the basis of these systems. More importantly, it analyzes the standardized approach to project management. This is not executed in a disapproving manner, but rather an evolutionary one. The allure of self-managed teams, or workforces for that matter, is discredited to some extent as a simple solution. However, further development in all of these areas is encouraged. The development of new knowledge relying on dialectic methods is advocated, with a caution to some of the well-founded critiques.